on Geoffrey. What do you think went wrong with the Council of Elders in Meru, who declared FGM illegal in 1956? Why is it that FGM is still happening in this community?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, for that amazing historical background. And, I know everyone, be it an organization, be it a community, everyone that wants to end female genital cutting, they all have good intention because they care for the people, especially when people get the right information and they realize that this practice is really harmful and it infringes on people's rights. People have all good intention, but there's always where the problem is. At Tostan, we've learned over the years that changing deeply rooted practices like female genital cutting cannot be done with one person, cannot be done with one family, cannot be done with one community. It has to involve and include everyone. What at Tostan we call the social network. And especially when the practice is connected to marriageability, it affects not only you as Godfrey or you as Tony or you as Martha and the rest, it affects the entire ecosystem. So you can have very good intention to end something, but if the behavior is connected to other people, it is also very important to mobilize them and to also facilitate the process where they can all be on the same wavelength with you. Where most of the time we go wrong is we get information, we get excited, and we go out there, not realizing that also other people receive information differently, and they internalize it differently, and they consume it differently. And going back to my first statement, especially when a practice is related, is deeply rooted, it's very hard to change. Like the scenarios you've talked about, Tony, that is what we call backlash. I know I've shared my story with you before. I also experienced backlash once when I was working for an international organization in Kenya, in Korea. And it was bad. It wasn't you, Tony, you know the story. It wasn't that smooth. They even burnt down a police station. They were almost burning down our car and all that. So, and this is not long time ago. This is just like 6 years ago. And I didn't know by then why, but now I am privileged to know why this happens. One of the reasons why sometimes people are very protective of certain practices is because these practices has been associated or they have been coined with values that are deep to us. For example, I know all of us in this call, we have different values that we believe in, different values that we treasure, that have been passed across generation, that defines you and defines the community. Values that if one person tries to go against, most of the time they meet resistance. So at Tostan, the first important thing that we do, especially when you want to deal with deeply rooted practices, we invest in the communities. We allow communities themselves to decide within themselves without timelines. Because changing behavior does not need timelines. You can't say, I want to change behavior within 2 years, 1 year, 3 years. For 32 years, we have communities that took even more than 5 years to make the decision to abandon the practice. But we also have communities that, because they were well organized and their social networks involved them in public declaration, decided to abandon even without waiting for long. But so the most important thing is value versus practice deliberation is something that needs to be done for communities to really understand why this practice doesn't reinforce those values. And also for them to be able to see what are some of the practices that we are involved with that are not creating harm, not doing harm to people, and what are those ones that are doing harm to people. And this also can also be anchored on the human rights as the foundation of this conversation. And this needs consensus. It is not a matter of you must stop. It is not a matter of stopping. It's a matter of ending. And to end something which and be sustainable, it needs consensus. Most of the time, the assumption has been that we can go with the 1 day, 2 days campaign or 1 day awareness and assume that people will decide to abandon, or what we commonly use as stop. That we've seen, it has never worked. Based on my previous experience, it actually catalyzes more resistance when you go with intentions that threatens people's collectiveness. And you know, in Africa, most of our countries are what we call the collectivist societies. And collectivist societies, they can gang against you when they feel like their togetherness is threatened, especially when you are an outsider. But when the change comes from inside, it is easier for them with time to understand, and with new information that is not forced, that is shared through dialogue and consensus building, that is also interconnected with other issues, and not being single issue and you say you only want to end this. You have to relate everything with well-being as a framework. But if you go with single issue, it's easy for you to be a target as an organization or as an individual. So you really need to have multi-dimensional approach that will ensure that people understand that your interest or your intention is not only to target or to talk about the culture, but to talk about other things. So I think, Tony, I will allow others to also share, and I will come back maybe if there's any question, because I can talk and talk and talk.
Yes.
So I don't want
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Godfrey, for that opening remarks. Prasanka, I know you shared while doing your introduction on how you experienced things, that at the point of getting married, you had to face the elders because they had contrary opinion. Can you share with us, how did you manage to convince them? And what have you done to ensure that this practice stops in your place?
Thank you so much, Tony. And I'm not sure whether the time we have for this webinar is enough for me to explain.
You have to make it short, a summary.
To explain the horror that I went through, but it wasn't nice. And being a man, you know, and having been in the gender and trying to work on women empowerment, and having observed the effect of female genital mutilation, especially on girls' education in the Maasai community, I became against the practice even before I married. And I witnessed girls dropping out of school and their destinies being cut short by harmful cultural practices, and FGM is the leader. And I decided I'm going to be a difference to fight this, and to give me like the credibility, I will marry an uncut girl. Fortunately, I came across one, and when she was still in college, from the Samburu community, and she was still to undergo the practice, because for them, you go through the practice the same week you are getting married. So you are cut and then you get married. And when I showed interest to marry this girl to both families, they accepted and they were happy because they were already considering me a latecomer. I was a little late. And I was granted the permission, and now they wanted to cut this girl immediately before we get married. And I told them, no, I don't want her cut. And the girl also didn't want to be cut. So we joined together and we started to fight this. Little did we know that we are sending ourselves to hell. Within a very short period, now in trying to declare our wish and what we want to do, all women were left aside. My fiancé, my mother, her mother, they were all left outside the battle, and I remained in the battle as the target, with my family, starting with my late father, fighting me seriously, and my father-in-law. So I was awakened now from today I know who owns FGM, and I fought with both families, men from my family and men from the other family, and I didn't bow. I cheated them many using tricks until I managed to marry my girl and cat. But from that time, 12 years ago, I stopped all the other engaging in all the other strategies and all the other things, and I went straight now to dealing with men, because I was fully awakened to who are the true owners and who are protecting female genital mutilation. So for me, it's a practical experience and it is documented. I want to touch a little on what you mentioned, Tony, about the backlash on 1956 Council of Elders Declaration and what is happening in Gambia and many parts. And Tony, I have been involved also in the Samburu Declaration, in the process of working towards the Samburu Declaration, you know it, in 2021 March. And I remember what the highest traditional institution, the highest decision-making authority in the Samburu community told us. We went to Mount Ngiro. Tony, you know, you are in Samburu, you know Mount Ngiro. That is the traditional religious, capital of the Samburu. It's the sacred mountain. And there is now the spiritual man, the seer, he is now late, he is called Le7, told us one thing. Men, I agree with you. I know the origin of FGM. It has been started by men. I know it in our culture, and I agree with you that maybe it's okay to abandon this practice, but I don't have authority to declare it illegal alone, because even if I'm convinced it's wrong and we should abandon it, I cannot make this declaration alone. I have to engage the custodians from the 6 Samburu mountains. So I'm sending you with a special delegation to go to the 6 mountains, engage all the men from those mountains, and when they agree, I'll get the report back from them, and this is when I will now guide you and the entire community on how we are going to do the declaration. So what am I trying to bring to put across? I don't know the process that the Njurinjeke used. Maybe they felt like they're the final authority and they made the declaration. But now, for example, the Samburu Declaration, which is a very nice one, and it's working. I've been there. It's a reference now made. It's being capitalized on by women, by everybody who is fighting against FGM. But it went through a traditional process. When you are formulating culture, when they are formulating traditions, values, and everything, they go through a thorough process. It's like a constitution, because culture is a constitution. You don't just wake up and do a declaration because you are the highest authority and you feel it's okay. So I think the backlash from the Jege, maybe you have to go back and look at that, but most likely it is because of the process that was taken, that was followed to come up with that declaration. Look at what is happening in Gambia, and it's happening again in many parts of this country. Tony, it's dangerous to leave men outside this game, because men can reverse the gains made in 20 years within one day. We have seen women who escaped FGM, and the day when they want to take their sons to circumcision in some communities, these women are forced. Women who are 45 years and above, they are forced again because of a certain cultural requirement to go through the practice again. So it's dangerous to leave men. And right now, I am doing community dialogue still in Samburu among the Sabaot, and an emerging question that disturbs me and proves that it is dangerous to leave men outside this is, like, men are missing the old good days. It's like with the current change in civilization, there are things that men treasured and community in general treasured, and they feel like we are losing. And right now there is increased teenage pregnancy, which was not there before. There are divorce, marriages instability, and I guess this is due to economic hardship. And again, increasingly, men are feeling like they are failing. The pressure is too much for them because the demands of family are high. So men are slowly getting frustrated because of economic and other things and other issues. So now look at the emergence of other things like LGBTQ. It's something that is coming up. It's mentioned everywhere. So now these men who are missing the old good days feel like our departure from some of the traditional beliefs and practices is to blame for all these problems, is to blame for the divorces that we are experiencing, is to blame for the indiscipline. They say today's girls are not marriageable, they are indisciplined, and they will tell you we have to go back to those practices. Look at what the Mungikis from the Kikuyu communities are doing in Kenya. It's going back, and it's a hangover from the days they feel were calm with very few problems, and which is not true. That is a new stereotype that is emerging among these cultural communities. And it is why we need to put men at the center, because when you look at the origin of the problem as a cultural problem, they are the founders. So we have to engage them as a solution. When you look at now the other emerging problems from society and civilization, they are forming a new stereotype of associating this with FGM and all these other things. And this is what is happening in Gambia. That's why they are repealing. Maybe they feel this thing is going to lead to other problems, which is wrong. It's not true. So we need to engage men as the founders of the problem and as the secondary survivors, and again as a threat if we leave them out. I think let me stop there for now, Tony.
Thank you so much, Prasanka. Mother, borrowing from what Godfrey and Prasanka have been able to say, and looking at all the research that has been done by different organizations, I have looked at the research by UNICEF. I've also been able to look at the Kenya Demographic Health Survey and demographic health surveys from other countries. And I see that majority of men in these communities and these countries who have been interviewed are against FGM. But yet, they are not speaking up about this vice. They remain silent. They choose to remain silent about the vice. So what are we doing? Maybe from amplified change angle, how can we be able to have these men join this conversation, speak up, because that is the biggest problem that we have in the quest to eradicate female genital mutilations locally.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I think for amplified change, engaging men and boys, I think we are forgetting the boys too. So engaging men and boys is one of our strategy, it's one of the strategy we are looking at when we are we are calling for these applications. And to say the truth, like based on the status, we have had more than 126 applications that are focusing on men and boys since Amplify Change started. But specifically on FGM, I think it's only men and FGM that fully is working on with men, but there are other applications that, like the other grantee partners that are working partially with men. So that is also welcome, because as you said, we can't detect what works in the grassroots. It's the grantee partner that say that engaging men is what works for us. So just go with that flow. But I think giving that platform for them to be able to apply, and then to be able to work on their project depends on what they say it works. But for Amplify Change, I think we can't really detect what works in the society. It's for them to tell us this is what works. But as we know that in the funding system, it's not easy. Like the fund is very small, and there are a lot of organizations. If I tell you like how much applications have been denied, not that they're bad, but just it's just there's a lot of competition. And also when it comes to FGM, I think we're missing one point, that it's the whole system, as one of the speakers said, like it's the whole system. It's not like ending FGM is not just, it's so connected, like there's the intersection of child marriage, intersection of economy, so involving men also. So if we think around the system, like thinking, I think we can come up with better solution. But for us, we give that platform, and we believe that grassroots has that knowledge. So if grassroots has that knowledge, we give you the platform to speak out. I think that is also something that is missing a lot, because we don't get the ground knowledge, like where are you putting that, like where are you going to put that ground knowledge to practice, because you need people to hear. So we have this different platform, including Amplify Learn, whereby the grantee partners learn from one another, but also they can just have that platform of telling us what is happening on the ground. Because I think also, because there's that power of knowledge, I think that is so important. So if they're the ones who are detecting the knowledge and saying this is what is happening, and not anyone from anywhere. So that is also very important in ending FGM.
Thank you so much, Mother. I will pick from where you left. You talked about intersectionality of FGM and other issues that affect our communities. I know that, Godfrey, you might or you must have experienced this, because it's something very common, whereby you go to a community and you're here speaking to the elders or speaking to the men mostly, and you're telling them about FGM, and then sometimes they're like, it's not our immediate problem at the moment. We are having famine, or we want to deal with water. How can we make sure that we bring FGM to the community members in the right way, intersectioning it with other issues? Because I know there are competing interests in the societies, so that we are able to make sure that the community have a buy-in in this conversation.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Martha, and my brother, Par Sanka. The solution, I will keep on repeating the word sustainable solution. Sustainable solution comes when you do development within the well-being framework. Development should not be done, sustainable development should not be done in silos. And as Tony, as you said, I happen to have worked in a program and we changed the strategy. And you know this story very well because Tony knows me very well. We got a funding to work on FGC by then, FGC only. But it didn't work because from the inception, we met resistance. Learning from the Tostan approach is that when you want communities to sustain actions, you have to operate within the well-being framework. Let me explain what do I mean by well-being framework. First of all, Martha says that even amplified change does not dictate what partners does. Allow communities to define their own change. Like we've mentioned here, you know, to us, because we are outsiders, we see FGM as an issue because we know the consequences. Some of them don't even know because they are not even allowed to question. You see, they're not even allowed. Maybe one or two people know that my child died because of hemorrhage, know that my child was suffering from something else and this practice ended that, but because they cannot question. My brother just said before that they had to go to the sacred hills and the mountains, you see. In such context, FGC is associated with spirits. Who dare challenge spirits? If you come from Africa, I come from Africa. And you know, there are people I never used to greet because I was told that if you greet them, you will die the next day. So looking in that context, you want to engage, you want these people to challenge something that is already associated with spirit. My friend, that conversation will not see the day of the light. You see, maybe they might come like one person once told me from a very big organization, I don't want to name the name. Godfrey, I'm sure they used to come because you used to give them per diem and lunch and everything. But once they leave the door, business as usual. Maybe that will attract them to come. But in such conversation, nobody will talk. You'll end up talking yourself. Within the well-being framework, when communities define their own well-being, the community themselves identifies what harms their well-being. And this is something that doesn't happen automatically. It happens over time. And even then, you will see some fears. Once they get the right information, you will see some fears in them. They will ask you, how will we go out and tell people? How will you go out and start this conversation? You see? So that is why when I spoke before, I said, invest in people. Invest in people so that they can frame the well-being agenda for themselves. Once they frame the well-being agenda, they can now mobilize the mass to join this movement. And it's a movement of well-being where everyone thrives. It's not a movement of ending child marriage, ending female genital cutting, or ending that. It's a movement of promoting well-being within the human rights. When people realize that it's not just about one thing, and when they start seeing results in other areas, they get motivated to be part of the process. Like I see some of my colleagues here who tell you, I see Idrissa here, who is the national coordinator for the Gambia. He will tell you that when Tostan starts conversations, we start with what we call little gains. We support communities to improve on their basic needs, on things that affect them on a daily basis. And within that, them themselves identify what we call limitations. What limits them from achieving their well-being? And you realize at some point, it reaches a point when it is very complex. So what makes the work easier for these communities to handle complex issues at some point is because they start with small things. and they start with working on their relations. And that is the first thing in the well-being framework, relational well-being. Sometimes we go in communities where people don't even speak to each other, and we expect to facilitate change. Work on the relational well-being. That is where I've always appreciated the Tostan model. Tostan model, for the first 1 year, it invests on improving people's relations. And if you look at even our recent evaluation from one of our biggest programs, the grassroots, the breakthrough generation, one of the results that keeps on coming out from communities is we are working better. We are now dialoguing. We have now understood why we take children to school. You see, the relational, I can now speak to my neighbors. I can now do this. I can now do that. We no longer hit our children. We have alternative ways of disciplining our children. When there's conflict, we dialogue. There was issues of peace. We have a peace and security program in Tostan. They will tell you, once relations work, even peace thrives. Yeah, so that is what I wanted to really emphasize, that, Tony, there is no shortcut. If you want to achieve sustainable development, and you want to end deeply rooted harmful practices, you have to operate within the holistic framework and stop single issues here.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. Now, Prasanka, we are in 2024. 2030 is fast approaching. What do we do? We need to end FGM, stop cutting. So what can we do? We have shared our basic stories of what we have been doing, but now we literally have to sprint. 2030 is here. We have been having this conversation since 1980s, since when we were never born. We were not even there. The conversation began a long time ago. So what actions, what are these precise actions we need to take to ensure that we are able to end FGM/C by 2030?
Thank you so much, Tony. And I want to thank Godfrey and Martha for very powerful insights. And Tony, time is running. It's true, 2030 is here. And we don't have any luxury of inertia and dilly-dallying around, because time is moving so fast. I want to start by saying that culture is an institution, and FGM being a cultural practice, many people fear, and they start fearing the intersectionality. And you know, it's true, because, for example, among the Maasai and Samburu, if FGM is a rite of passage, then after undergoing the practice, there are rights and privileges that are given to a person after going through this. And these rights and privileges are well designed to make the practice something nice, fashionable, you see. And those rights and privileges and gifts and names and those sweet things that are associated with it are what makes it difficult to abandon the practice. And now, because of the depth of the intersectionality, it's why I want to now ask us to take the problem to the owners of the problem. Let us take the challenge to the right owners. Mother has said communities know their solutions. And again, Godfrey has repeated the same. And now I'm telling us, let us pick the challenge and take it to the problems. Who are the owners of the problem? The custodians of culture. Go to men under the trees where culture is discussed every day. It is good to meet in conferences once in a while. It is good to do other forums and all the other strategies. A problem requires multi-sectoral interventions, but go straight to the host of the problem. Who are the elders? And when you go and empower them and awaken them to the realization of the effects, the side consequences of FGM, you will see them now struggling to fight the benefits and privileges. How are we going to navigate now? Like, for example, the Maasai, an age group chief must have been born of a cat woman. Now you will see them discussing this. How now, if we abandon this practice, where are we going to get this age group chief? So the hidden drivers of FGM, we don't know. It's only the community who knows. So if we identify the correct, in every community, the correct traditional system, if it is elders, who are these elders? Because even elders have a hierarchy, they are an institution. Don't just go and collect elders in a village and start saying, I'm debating with custodians of culture. Culture has systematic structures, and it has different cadres of leaders with different levels of authority. Identify this structure and go and begin the journey with them. Convert them. Once you convert them, put them at the forefront of the strategy. Let them drive going forward. They will tell you, let us go and meet this leader in this village. Let us go and meet so and so. Until the level where they will ask you, now let us meet the cutters. They will tell you, now let us meet women. Let us meet the youth. That is what is happening right now in Mount Elgon. But it begins with themselves reforming the authority before they go to many men. So let us identify the responsible traditional institutions immediately. Let us go straight to grassroots organizations, organizations that are comfortable working under the trees, not people who are used to these fancy hotels, Wi-Fi, blah, blah. People who are comfortable sitting under the trees, no seats. Go and look for those organizations, grassroots, that are based on the ground, people who understand the culture. Provide resources to build their capacity. Give them systems and infrastructure. Give them skilled personnel. If Tostan approach is good, link them to Tostan for training. Progressive Culture is a trainer of community dialogue facilitators. And I want to thank Amplify Change, because you are supporting our consortia with Men and FGM. And it's a beautiful strategy that we are trying to work. But again, the resources are not there. It's a beautiful strategy approach without adequate resources. Let us get resources, build capacities, give them mobility vehicles so that they can go to those institutions. Right now, we are in Mount Elgon working with the Sabot, and I'm telling you, the highest traditional institutional authorities are on top of them. It's sometimes you go with a vehicle, you have to stop using the vehicle, use a motorbike. Now, do you see the flexibility that is needed even for the grassroots workers? So let us go to community-based organizations, empower them, and they are the ones who know who is to be approached, who is the traditional leader in this community, who is the age group chief, where does he stay, who are his men, because that is authority. Those grassroots are the organizations which know these people. So we have to accelerate our engagement with grassroots organizations and give them adequate resources, because time is not on our side. And they are the ones who are capable of engaging these traditional institutions. And then we bring on board all the other stakeholders now to stay behind the traditional institution in supporting them with the necessary support and capacity now to deconstruct their culture, because we are the ones who are proposing it for them to come up with a traditional institution. They invest their resources. their time, they slaughter their cows, they use a lot of resources to come up with these practices. So now, once we want them to change, we have to support now this institution, because we are the proponents, work with them, and help them reach to who matters in the traditional hierarchy and support them. And with this approach, in the right way, we are going to end FGM within the shortest time. And I can tell you, Tony, working with custodians of culture is the shortest, safest, and fastest way to abandon and to end FGM sustainably. Sustainably, I mean, it's not going to re-emerge. We are not going to experience backlash. But any other strategy that is going to leave them outside is going to experience a comeback, like we have already seen. Let me end there, Tony.
Thank you so much, Parasanka. And I see people are chatting on the chat box. Thank you so much. Let's continue the conversation there. Also, I promise you that we'll be going into Q&A, and also we'll be allowing you to give your comments in a while. So let's keep on listening. Now, Martha, I am looking at the chats and I'm seeing a lot of people having conversations and saying that we are engaging men and boys in ending FGM. And I'm just wondering, what is the position of Amplified Change, or your own opinion on this, in terms of how can we be able to bring together a movement? Because I have seen, for example, the former president of Kenya committed to end female genital mutilation by 2022. Yes, he did not achieve that, but what happened is that we have been able to see a lot of reactions from the government structures and many people coming out and speaking out in Kenya. The same way, the current president of Kenya, who just came in power a year ago, has been moving around across the country, speaking in every forum that he gets a chance on the need to have men as part of this conversation. So far, he has made more than 5 statements across the country. How can we leverage in this statements from the powerful people, and also leverage from this goodwill that we have here in building a movement of men and boys in the quest to end FGM, child marriages, and other harmful practices?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. It's very interesting. I think we should always bring donors in this conversation, because at this, now thinking out loud, I think next time if I see an application and there's a budget for 2 cows, I should not be surprised. But I think for us, we have different types of funding rounds, and one of our funding round is called a network grant, and that's where we want all these grassroots organizations to join together, because we believe in the power that comes with having one voice. So with a network grant, that means you'll be able to have that one voice in bringing that change in the community. And I think having like one focus, and that's very important, because that will make you have that like all your energy and like the focus in one thing, instead of saying, oh, I'm ending FGM, I'm ending child marriage, I'm using economic empowerment. Like you lose that focus. So having that network grant, I think our vision was to bring that one voice to all these organizations working on one thing. And happily that call will be this year, maybe Q4 probably, but it's on the process, and it's for everyone. Just looking around what Amplified Change supports. And as I said, men and boys engagement is also like one of the strategies that we are looking at. And so there's that call. But for the other grants that we give, it's opportunity grant, which is a very good grant for this organization who either you're registered or you're not registered, either you have a good structure or not, but you have that idea, you bring it on. And also that gives an opportunity for this young organization who are really working under the tree to come up and just work on their vision, which for most of them, they start from their pocket. Like working from a grassroots organization, I know that is how it starts. Like you have that passion for change, but you don't have that money, but you do it anyway because you believe that what you're doing is for the best. So that is also what we also support. I think there's a room of bringing more donors on the conversation. And yeah, whenever I get the chance, like this year, we had the conversation with a lot of donors, and for them it was like missing. They don't want to support FGM. They're saying, oh, we are supporting economic empowerment, but just saying that this is also FGM at some point. Just supporting child marriage, but that is FGM. So I think bringing them on board, because we really need the fund. You can't, like the cows are not free. So I think that is also important. Yeah, something that grassroots organizations should just think around that. And also, I think I've answered your question, but just to add up to that, there's a room of knocking every time. You have the idea, just go for it, because we want the change, and the change is always, it takes time. But when I think around this discussion is around the power dynamic, Tony, you understand me better, because we went to university together, and power was one of the predominant topics. And yeah, so the thinking around power that is dynamic and its relation, that gives hope, like there's a room for change.
Thank you so much, Mother. I believe we have other donors in this room. When I scroll on the list of people attending, I can see several of them. So I believe they're listening, and they are hearing the voices of these amazing gentlemen and lady having this conversation. I see Godfrey, you had something burning. Your hand went up. So I'll give it to you before we open up the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Martha just said. When I spoke about well-being and implementing holistic program, we don't expect grassroots organizations to do everything. But it is very important for them to be able to support communities to define their vision of well-being and then build synergies with other partners. And I'm happy to hear that Amplify Change is actually, into the space of supporting these grassroots organizations so that at least they can work in consortiums through the grants. So where Toaster now comes in is even how to support this grassroots organization, first of all, to reorganize themselves within the organization before going to the community, because I've seen so many consortiums being created, and along the way, things never work out because they are not even prepared for the task. You see, it is also very important. So part of what Tostan also support through learning and sharing is also sharing our experience on how can these collectives work for the betterment of achieving community well-being. And it doesn't mean they have to use all their resources. The government has resources to fund most of the things that actually some NGOs are doing. You just need to know, how do you support communities to be active during the budgeting process or the public participation where priorities of the communities are being discussed? Because some of these sessions, people don't go. Politicians just send their friends to go there and so that they sign and things go. You find, so these are conversations we can have. I know we partner with Amplify Change as Torsten, but as you work with grassroots organization, I as somebody who came from a grassroots organization in my early life, I think we need to partner with them and strengthen their capacity. They are doing amazing work, but we just need to strengthen their capacity and, yeah, thank you. That is what I wanted to add, Tony, sorry.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. And I'm feeling so comfortable with this conversation, being an alumni of Tostan and getting funding from Amplify Change, working with grassroots organization. Thank you so much. I feel at home. Now, I think it's about to time that we open the floor because we have, so that we don't lock out anyone who has questions. So please, if you have something burning or you want to make a comment or something or pose a question to any of the panelists, including me as the host, please feel free to raise your hand and the phone is going to unmute you, and then the floor will be yours. Yes, I see already we have Dr. Helen Katok. Dr. Helen. Yes. Okay. I think you're unmuting again. Zephon. Oh. Go ahead, Dr. Helen. Yes, we can.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this meeting, Tony. How are you? And a happy new year. Long time we have not seen each other. My name is Dr. Helen Gadhogo from Laikipia. In the field, in the space of the fight against FGM and child marriages. And mine is to the Amplified Church and other donors within the space or within in the meeting. Most donors seem not to realize that the fight, when there is any fight, there are also casualties. And these casualties are badly harmed and they require some treatment, blah, blah, full psychosocial support and all that. And for them to heal. In this case, I'm talking about the real survivors, as in girls, especially those that run away or they're rescued from these marriages, and they need to be in a safe houses. And there's issue of donors not looking at the other part of a safety house, a safe house where these girls they are put, and then all the basic necessities are provided to them. It's a very expensive and undertaking, and this is the one that really bring out the best from the community, because them girls now join the fight against FGM and child marriages, but it seems most of the donors are concentrating on workshops, on training, and all that. And I don't know how you measure that, because mostly like us, we have a safe house. It's like anybody who want to host anything, that is the time now they realize that one more day is there, so that we are able to amplify their voices as part of the fight. But they're having a lot of donors, while us, when we apply, we seem not to be getting this grant. Where are we going wrong? Where are the donors not getting it right? What can be done to bridge the gap? Because the survivors themselves are wondering, did we do wrong? Did we run away to to annoy anybody, or who is going to help us? So mostly the charitable actions are the ones that are really taking care of these survivors up to the age where they get settled. That is through education, food, and others are coming when they're already pregnant, and therefore they have to be taken care of, and as well as the babies. What can we do so that we also, as we are talking about amplifying the voices of the same, and also the change, and also helping the grassroots organization, which really are doing very well and very much, what else can we do to ensure that the survivors themselves within the safe houses, are able also to benefit? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. Who do we direct this question to? Who feels gracious enough? Martha, Godfrey. Martha, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Helen. I think you made a very good point, especially this year's theme on FGM was around survivors. And as I say, so Amplify Change is funds advocacy. And if you do have an application and you, like, I'm just trying to frame this out, like an application whereby you're going to advocate for a government to go and build those safe houses, then you can apply. Because for us, we believe in advocacy and like a very long-term change. Because if we give you money and then the fund is used maybe to feed the girls in safe houses, but when Amplify Change is not there, who's going to feed the girls? So, but if you direct that advocacy strategy to the government, that let the government have this plan of feeding these girls in safe houses or building those safe houses, then that is what we really fund, because we believe in that long-term sustainability of these projects. But also in terms of just, I think I said that for us, it's the grantee that detect what works. And we don't also believe so much in like the number of participants who participated in these meetings. I think Tony knows when the next report, I'm not interested with how many people have attended that meeting that you had. For us, it's just that one person who can, if one person can bring the change, then let it be. If it's two people, then let it be. It's just, it doesn't matter how many people have attended, but it just what matters, what are the impact that we got from this training. So you don't have to tell me how many people participated. You don't have to tell me how the numbers, like showing me the numbers of the phone numbers of people. It's just what has the meeting brought, like which impact did you get from that meeting which you had with these Maasai men in Samburu? That is the most important to us.
Thank you so much, Martha. And Godfrey, I just remembered something. I think you made a commitment that Tostan is going to support in terms of capacity building some of the grassroots organizations who are in this meeting. Was that a commitment? And in terms of building consortiums and everything? Or did I get that wrong? I just remembered, it just occurred to me. Was that a commitment so that we put you under the bus?
That is a nice one. We are already doing that. We are doing that through strategic partnership, and I'm happy that Martha is here. You remember when I even mentioned that is where now Martha comes in, because we have the skills and, and we have the, the information to be shared. So we are always available, and you know that. Maybe just to let Martha know, we are available if, for example, your grantees, and even now we have different offerings. And just to mention, ours is not like training per se, it is more of experience. You learn through experience. You get the point? Where we share what has worked and you apply it in your context. Even though some of us are technical trainers, but in this context, it is not like technical seminar where you come and you sit down and you just lecture. No, it is about sharing on some of the things that have worked, why they have worked, and what you need to do to work. Because we believe one thing at Tostan, that people already are empowered, people have the capacity. What needs to be done is just strengthening, or what we call to awaken that capacity to aspire more. Because of what I mentioned before, there are a lot of limitations and all that. So in this space, we commit that we are available, and maybe not me as Godfrey alone, even through the Tosan Training Center, through strategic partnership, we always allow people to go and have the opportunity to learn and also share the amazing things that they are doing. Yeah. So Tony, it is a commitment, yes, that we are already doing, but we need to come together with more partners like Amplify Change so that we can also know how to support their grantees and also other donors in the house, because you're already doing it with Global Fund for Children and also with Shofco in Kenya and also with other partners, that are working directly with the grassroots communities. Yeah, super.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. And I hope Dr. Hayden's question was well answered. Yes, I can see Tracy hand is already up. We will give the room to Tracy to ask a question or give a comment. And then maybe, do we have any other donor in the house? We would like to hear their voices and how we can be able to move together in this conversation. So over to you, Tracy.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Tracy. So I just had a question to, I guess, Mr. Godfrey and Mr. Parsanka, or anyone who can answer. So I know you've mentioned that, changing, it can be quite difficult to change like deeply rooted practices. And so like it involves everyone. And I know Mr. Parsanka, you said that like we have to we have to approach chiefs and elders who have been, part of like FGM practices for a very long time, and they've been taught that for many years. But my question is, and forgive me if you've already mentioned this, but how do you begin to start to educate an elder and tell them this is wrong? What are the different approaches you could use? Because I know myself as an African, even just speaking to my father in itself and talking to him about other things, it can be quite difficult to change his mind. So when you go to an elder who has had these practices for so many years and to start telling them you cannot do this, it's very tricky. So what are some of the approaches that you would suggest? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I think I will hand this over to Mr. Parsanka Sayanka.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That's such a good question. And Tracy, I know, when we speak of these cultural institutions and, Godfrey talked about challenging spirits. These are people who are feared because you looked like people who have spiritual powers, and even just approaching them is like what I called one day, go and negotiate with Pharaoh. Pharaoh in the Bible. So it's true, it's tricky, Tracy, but it's very simple and doable. How do we do as progressive cultures? The issue of FGM is actually the easiest to begin discussing it with the traditional institution. And I mean traditional institutions is not just elders. First, identify the real traditional institution. These are, for example, in the Maasai community, age group chiefs. Each age group has several cadre of traditional leaders. Get them into one place, and first thing, you have to appreciate culture and their position, because culture is not bad in totality. There are so many beautiful cultural aspects, adorable, good ones that are not violating any human rights, that are admirable. Begin by recognizing and appreciating this. For example, the Maasai culture has things documented even as world heritage. You see, recognize this. Then, as you proceed, also now start introducing the concept of harmful traditional practices. Are there practices you feel even the community, the people you lead, are not comfortable with? Then in that line, you can now ask them now the issue of FGM and just ask them, do you know why female genital mutilation, for example, here in Kenya, has been criminalized? You know, you go with the laws. FGM has been criminalized, and there are international instruments, regional instruments, our Kenyan constitution. We have even a prohibition of FGM Act. So it is something they already know, and that is why they have changed. They are not practicing the same way they used to do. Right now, it's a community crime because they are aware they are doing something illegal. Okay, so they have stopped the celebrations, they have reduced the age of cutting, they are cutting at night. It's no longer celebrated, it is being stolen. This tells you they are clinging on to something they know is illegal. Then now begin from there. Do you know why it is illegal? Then now they will vent. They will tell you it's a country that is aping other cultures, that is you will see now the ignorance. They don't know the effects, and you will see that they appear like they are defending a culture. You see, they don't know the harms, the side effects. They don't know even how it affects men themselves. When you go into the sex science, I do that a lot, and telling them how the cut affects even the sexual experience for men, you know, and this is something they like so much. Now they'll open up and be willing to listen and hear. And now you have to work with them deeply to make sure they understand and they are convinced. Spend as much time as they require in this. Convince them. Then after that, once they are convinced, ask them to now guide the process and just tell them they are free to come up with a work plan. Then you will accompany them. You will be you will be they will introduce you to the next group, to the next level, to introduce the topic, and they'll give their opinion, and it becomes very interesting. I'm telling you, I have learned very deep things about culture because of these open conversations where men talk freely and openly. They challenge themselves, they make confessions how they are suffering as secondary survivors. Then it becomes a very interesting conversation at that level. And when you arrive at this, they will take up the process and lead. And this is when now you will know you need resources, because they will start telling you, we have to move from this point and convince B, convince C, convince D before you. This is now when you come to the deep realization that culture is a deep institution. And if you leave one stage untouched, you risk backlash, and they will tell you freely. So when you put them at the forefront, be ready now to work with them. And so this is now, because they have to change, to turn every stone. They have to speak to everybody so that it becomes a holistic, it becomes a consensus thing, because they fear doing it alone. They want to build a critical mass before they come up with resolutions to abandon. I will leave now to maybe Godfrey and Tony. Tony, speak. I know you know this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you said you hit the nail on the head. So that let me not add or dilute whatever you said, so that we can have as many people as possible having the conversation. I see we have other hands up, please. Anyone else who goes next? Any donor? Anyone from? Yeah, I'm seeing names. I don't want to call people up. So any donor, any representation from from embassies, maybe people who support this work in one way or another. Anyone who wants to say something? Anyone with a question? Anyone with a comment? The floor
And
is
maybe
yours
Tony,
at the moment.
as we wait
Yes.
for someone to come in,
Yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize one thing based on the question that has been asked.
Yes.
Is that listening is very critical. Yeah. When you work with communities, and especially when you're working on issues around social norms. And I like one of the participants has just put a comment there that, yes, it is criminalized, but it is still upheld. You know, people have never asked, what does that mean? Yes, it is criminalized, but it's not upheld, but it's still upheld. Why do we say that? We should remember that these practices are upheld by social norms, some of which we cannot see with our own eyes, some of which operate underground. You will meet somebody in the day and they will tell you, I have changed. But when they realize the consequences, they will go back to the practices. You see, I once met some elders, like my friend is saying, and in a conference where we brought them together in my earlier life, it was funded by a donor, and we wanted them to go and do a declaration. And guess what they told us in that conference? You know, you guys, when we'll go back to our communities, you will also go back to your communities. How do you expect us to go and condemn what we have been doing over generation, and you still expect us to live in that community? That question really bothered me so much for so many years. So, and that is why I say listening is very critical. And as my friend also said, know your stakeholders and engage them over time and provide information, and don't make FGC your subject matter alone. Talk about the entire well-being of that community so that they don't target you as somebody who has come to maybe challenge the status quo on what they have done over years. That is what I just wanted to add. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. I think I'm burning to say something. There's so many things that Godfrey and Prasanka have just said about this. Let's not make FGM the topic of the day. Men are always excited about having a lot of conversations about different things. In most of the FGM practicing communities, you find they keep animals. The animals are being attacked by wild animals. They do not have schools. They are bridges. They like football, some of them, especially for the young men. Begin the conversation with something interesting that you know they love and they like speaking about. For now, you are able to delve into other deeper matters of FGM, child marriages, teenage pregnancies, so that by the time you're having these conversations, you've already joined and become part of that community that you have set up at that particular given time, so that you're able to gel with each other. You're already having nice conversations about the animals, about the flock, about the rains, about different things affecting their community. So by the time you get to FGM, by the time you're getting to child marriage, then you've already broken the ice. And I can tell you for sure, something that I've experienced is that men like talking and men like having conversations. Once you're able to break the ice, then they open up and they're ready to learn and have these conversations. Thank you so much. Who is next? I see we have a question from Lamin Fati, who is asking, where do we draw the line between culture and religion while dealing with FGM/C? In the Gambia, we are confronted with religious leaders taking lead in advocating for the repeal of FGC law. So where do we draw the line between FGM and religion? Who is willing to take this? And what can we be able to do to have a buy-in from our religious leaders and the whole conversation and the whole community? My panelists. Thank you so much. Go on, Prasanka.
Tony, I want to say I really fear that angle. I deal more with the cultural aspect, and I'm deep in that and very comfortable. So I'm not sure whether, but I just want to share an experience on how we approach it as a cultural practice, because what I know is religion is an institution, it's organized the same way culture is an institution and is organized. And if you see a cultural institution pushing on and holding on to this practice, that is an indication of ignorance. There are people who are there who are still ignorant on the effect. They are still ignorant, and that is why they are using that position and the institution to uphold the practice. So there is an underlying disease, ignorance. So my experience, or maybe what what they can try is, again, when you go to the religious institution, begin at the top and get it correct. Spend as much time as you need to identify the correct people at the helm of that religion, and spend a lot of time with them, converting them first. And then from there, you will discover that culture is very systematic, and they don't move with speed. They move very systematically and slowly. And it is the same for religion. So identify the highest. Don't waste time with followers, those who come to worship, to sing. Go to the highest authority of the religion that is in question there. Begin conversation there. Then once you have the ignorance of the highest authority addressed, they will lead you on who they need to convince next, because those institutions don't make resolutions alone. Even if the leader on top is reformed, as long as his supporters, the people in under him, support the practice, they will keep quiet. And this is what happens with politicians. You know, politicians in Kenya, the elite, they don't cut their daughters, but when they go to the community, they never open their mouths about FGM. They can only talk about FGM after traditional leaders have spoken. Then he will come out and say, of course, this is bad, but he cannot take the lead because they know these are institutions. So go to the highest, the right people, the right office, begin conversations there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And maybe to add also into that, we have a little experience working with the Muslim religious leaders in Kenya, in northern Kenya. And what I can say is that if you go to the Muslim religious leaders as a Christian, first of all, you are lost, because you will not have any conversation, because they will say you are kafir. That's what they say. You're an unbeliever. So the conversation is dead. So what we do, we make sure that we go with a sheikh who is well informed and can be able to challenge the Muslim brothers, and tell them that FGM is not part of the Quran. Yes, I know there is the notion that FGM is part of an hadith, which they call hadith afif, not like the main Quran, and it's not a requirement by the Muslims religion to be able to undergo FGM. So once you are able to go with someone who can be able to challenge them, go with a scholar, go with someone who is already informed, someone who is having these conversations. And then what happens is that if you're able to challenge them, then normally they shift and say, now it's our culture. So they are always alternating between it being a religious requirement and it being a culture. So if you are able now to counter the two narratives, then you can be able to have a conversation. Maybe just to share something. One day we went to have a conversation with the Muslims, and we were having this conversation, and they seemed not to, they were still inclined towards FGM, and we challenged them and asked them if they wanted to watch a video, they were men, on how FGM is done. And first of all, we had two religious leaders there, the sheikhs, and they said that Islam does not allow them to see the nakedness of a woman. Just two of them. And then we had 35 men in the building. And what happened is that the other men said, no, but we came here to learn. We have been having amazing conversations about the animals, about all these other things. Now we have gotten to FGM. And why not allow? Why can't we just watch? Because we are here to learn. We can just want to know because we have no idea what this FGM is. And I tell you, once we were able to project that video, the two men did not even watch for 45 seconds. They were the first ones to leave the building. I witnessed one of the men there shedding tears during while he was watching the video, and I couldn't understand why this elderly man and tears just rolling down his chin. And after watching the video and having the conversation, I called him aside and trying to find out why were you shedding tears. And then he explained to us that he's a government official who works for the government. He knew very well about FGM, but one day he went for a business trip. And then on coming back, he was actually called from the trip. And coming back, he found that the daughter was in hospital. So what had happened is that when the wife was left behind, they colluded with the mother-in-law and took his daughter for cutting. And then the daughter had complications. She bled and she had to have some blood transfusion and spent almost a week in hospital. So the man could not really come to terms that whatever he had watched is what the daughter went through. So he was shedding tears and he was very bitter and promised to go back and beat the wife for having done that. Because now he was like, I did not know. And I could not report this to the police or the authorities because now my wife was going to be jailed. So you can see the whole confusion because if he reports the wife to the police, then the wife is going to be arrested. She is going to be jailed and have a trouble to the family. But he vowed to go back and beat up the wife. And now we have to bring the chief and the wazee, Nyumbakumi, the elders, to have a conversation with him and tell him that he needs to forgive the wife. This happened a long time ago, and beating the wife will not have any solution. So these are some of the examples. We need to really get these men to a point whereby they can be able to listen to us. We can be able to give them the examples. We can be able to show them some of these consequences. Because very unfortunate that you might find out even these men in the Gambia who are out there convincing survivors of FGM and other small girls. I saw them demonstrating outside the parliament. You might be shocked that even, I think he's called Fatih. You might be shocked that he has no idea of what FGM really entails or the actual cutting itself. He just thinks maybe it's just pricking on a small cut or something of the sort. As someone being able to sit him down, convince him to see some of these consequences, convince him to understand how deep this thing is, have him know the consequences of this practice, and then, because I truly believe that there's no man out there who really understands the consequences of FGM or has been able to see them and know what happens, and in the right frame of mind, who will just go out there and say that we want to repeal the law against FGM. I still have a doubt that is happening in the Gambia, and I need someone to convince me that that guy really understands the consequences of FGM and still wants to spearhead this campaign of repealing the law against FGM. I see, Godfrey, you're burning. Your hand keeps on coming up and down. Do you want to say something on the set?
Okay, Tony, what I wanted to say, actually, you've said some of it. But the most important thing is when you are engaging with religious leaders, use consensus building. And as my friend mentioned before, it is important for you also to make sure that whoever engages with them is one of them. Tostan works a lot with religious leaders, and we have a religious expert. So like Godfrey, I cannot just say, hey, I just have to go and start facing religious leaders. Even the seminars with religious leaders are done with religious experts who are imams or reverend fathers or pastors. They're the ones who lead these conversations. Why do I say that? Because religion is, if you start to argue about religious texts, you can never end. And every religious leader has their defense, and they have their own interpretation of the same script, scripture that you think you know better than them. And also the most important thing is that religious leaders also listen. They really listen very well. And if we don't engage them well, that is one thing I've realized. Most of the programs engage them in 1 or 2 day seminar, and that is the end of it. The same way we engage in communities is the same way we should continuously engage with religious leaders. Because as one of the participants has said here, they are very influential. Oh my God. What they say in the church today can water down all your success. So engaging them in a sustainable way is very critical, and making them be one of your key ally over time, not only when you need them, will help you. One of them told me in Kenya that you guys of NGO in Swahili, ni watu wa NGO mnatutafutanga tu kama mnataka ku tick box. You just look for us when you just want to tick box, stakeholders meeting and all that. Please, if you want to work with them, let's work. These people are amazing and masses listen to them. Yeah, that is what I wanted to add. Yeah.
So much. I see another question from Gillian. She's asking, FGM has been criminalized, but is it upheld? What are the views on police officers and FGM? Who is willing to take this one? I know one police officer was stoned to death in December last year in Kenya while trying to rescue girls from FGM. Parsanga, would you mind taking that? What do you think about the police officers and the FGM implementation of the law?
Yeah, Tony, a law is hardly a solution. When here in Kenya, we have very, very good laws and criminalizing FGM, and we have a judicial system that is, and even we have police stations with gender desks and all these systems that are there ready to arrest FGM perpetrators. But if there is a crime that is not reported or underreported, is FGM. Why? Because FGM is not, in quotes, is not their problem. It's a problem to you, you outsider, you who put that law there. FGM is a problem to you, but it's not a problem to us, the Maasai. So put up police, put up systems and everything. We are not going to report because FGM to us is not a problem. It's not rape. And worse is that now if you come up with those laws that are supposed to be implemented with police officers with uniform and Land Rovers who are known, and with a chief who has an office and with a routine of work, we know the government, we know where they are, and we know when to do the cut at a time when the government has no idea what we are doing. You see? So what am I saying? We have to address the ignorance within the community through community dialogues, because it's the only solution. Threats have been tried. All these kind of laws have been tried, but a true, sustainable, and fastest solution is dialogue. Eliminate the ignorance, as Tony has said, using various tools, the videos and everything. Take conversations to the grassroots, to the custodians of culture, and address the ignorance. They are not animals. They know culture is beautiful. They are doing it out of ignorance. And I went to one dialogue in the farthest part of northern Kenya, and the problem we had a government vehicle with GK, and one guy said, elder said, this is a government vehicle. Okay, before you tell us your problems and what you are coming to tell us, we normally hear there is somebody called the government who is supposed to address our roads, who is supposed to give us food, who is supposed to give us school, who is supposed to protect us from banditry, and he is nowhere. So before we discuss about the law and what government is saying or anything, can they come and address these problems first? Then we will talk about FGM. So you see, it's a problem out of ignorance. So no force, no application of force. It's good, and that's why I said, ask, do you know why it has been criminalized? Do you think it's an attack of your culture? Why do you think the government is interested to fight your culture? So address this ignorance first, and you also have to identify how deep is this ignorance. This is when you learn about the stereotypes, all the interconnected issues that we were talking about. By fact finding on this, you will know the depth of the ignorance, and you will know the ideal tools and ideal experience or things that you need to use to address that ignorance according to its level. Until you have that person healed, then he become a disciple, then he becomes somebody useful going forward in your campaign to end FGM. So that's all I have to say. Tony.
Thank you so much, Prasanka. We have 12 minutes to go before we end this conversation. I can see, I will ask all my panelists to be able to put their emails on the chat box, just in case anyone wants to reach out to you. Also, Zephon is going to put the email for Men and FGM on the chat, just in case you want to reach out to us as an organization. And I continue to ask, do we have anyone else with a comment on this amazing conversation, or someone who wants to ask a question? Do we have someone else? Yes. The floor is open. Do we have someone else who wants to make a comment? Yes. Do we have someone else who wants to make a comment? Please, the emails have been shared on the chat, just in case you want to speak to any of the panelists.
Tony, Dr.
Yes. Yes.
Dr.
Okay.
Ellen's
Okay. Yeah.
hand is up. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I see you. Yeah. So, Zephon, can you unmute Dr. Ellen again to be able to ask or give a comment? Yes, the floor is yours, Dr. Ellen.
Hello, thank you so much. This is something that we should be having. Now, my parting shot is, let's remember that FGM, child marriages, is against the children's rights. And let's embrace the four guiding principles of children's rights. And let's embrace child participation, because they are tomorrow, boys are tomorrow's sweeter. Now that the community I hear, I listen, there was nini, all that. But if you start with the children themselves as boys and girls in school through clubs, they'll grow up, they'll grow up knowing that this is wrong, this is right, and they will also protect each other and report, and they will also be able to protect their own children in future. So for sustainability, that is guaranteed when you embrace the child participation strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Helen. I agree, child participation is key. We cannot be able to leave the future generation out of these conversations. Thank you so much for your comment. Do we have anyone else, or should we call it a day? Okay, I will pick the parting shots from our panelists. Going parting shots from our panelists, and I will give Martha the first opportunity to give us a parting shot.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for this wonderful time. Like, time is just going. It's 8 minutes to close my laptop, but I just feel like I still want to be here because it's a very nice conversation. But I think what I've grabbed today is one thing. Maybe should we change the language? Because Godfrey talked about welfare. Should we move from FGM? Maybe it's a scary type of word that we are using, and instead we just go with the very simple, understandable language like welfare for these girls in the community. And yeah, so with Amplify Change, we are very, very supportive in the movement, and we are happy for any discussions, if you have anything that you want to talk about. We are still growing, and we are a learning organization too. So as we say that it's your voice, so how can we make it better for you? And we always do our best in order to help our grantee partners. Like currently, we are also having these learning platforms, which we have learning platform like advocacy, communications, fundraising. And so there's that room for learning every day, because social norms is not, like changing social norms is not easy. It's not a 1 year practice, like it doesn't have timeline. But at the same time, I think there's a need for celebrating these wins that we get as organizations. So like there's hope, and there's, for anything that happen, we should just be happy and just celebrate that we have done it, even if it's not what we expected, but it's just to give ourselves motivation and also keeping ourselves safe. That is also very important. Like it should be number one in the activism world. Despite that, we're doing a lot to the community, but also our own self-care is also very important in order for us, in order not to lose that spirit, the fighting spirit in us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mother. I know where you're coming from. If the post-colonial feminists come here, they'll ask you, is it female genital mutilation, or which term are we supposed to use? But I don't want to go into that conversation for today. It's a conversation for another day when we talk about the terminologies and if they exist in the communities that we work in. So maybe still with you, Martha, how can people be able to join the platforms that you mentioned, the learning platforms by Amplify Change? Is there something you can be able to share, a link, or explain to the people how they can be able to join these platforms?
So currently the platform are only available to the grantee partners, and we have over 2,000 grantee partners. 200 plus grantee partners. So currently it's only available to them, but we have a website called Amplify Learn, and I'll share with you on the chat, whereby the Amplify Learn is where you hear those voices of grantee partners, and they provide that platform to learn from one another. And also through our website, you can see the grantee partners. If you want to connect with them, there's that room for you to do that. So whoever is working in any of the organization around Africa or South Asia, so if you want to connect with these grantee partners, you can just see them on the website.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Parasanka. What is your parting shot?
Thank you, Tony. It's been great being here. And what I just want to say is, Let us invest in an infrastructure that is going to take this conversation to the right people under the trees and sustain it, because consistency is of high importance in terms of driving change. By the infrastructure, I mean, let us get resources, identify community-based organization, build their systems, build their infrastructure, give them capacity, and work with them in taking this conversation to the grassroots under the trees as a matter of a day-to-day basis, not one meeting in a month, not one meeting in a semi-quarter. Let us try to increase the frequency of these conversations with the right people under the trees. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barsanka. Over to you, Godfrey. What is your parting shot?
Thank you, Tony. My other technology has frozen. So I'm back here. I think my fellow panelists have said it all, but I want to add this. Change is a process. Change is not an event. Communities are human beings. Human beings, the way we operate is different, is diverse. Listening is key. And for you to achieve during this process, you have to invest in people, improve on their relational well-being so that you can achieve the functional well-being. Most of the time we rush, we want to realize functionalities, which is infrastructures, which is not bad. Material well-being is not bad. But for those materials to be sustained, people need to work together. So invest in people. I'm just echoing what my colleague have said, and invest in grassroots and allow them to lead the change process. You and me should facilitate the process, but not be the expert. Where the expert at, we can advise, but in a more respectful way by listening and guiding. Because when you talk about harmful practices, most of the time, our expert mentality has never helped. I'm talking as Godfrey because I've been in this space before and I know what it means. So let's listen, let's invest in people, and let's realize that change takes time and it's a process and not an event. Thank you, Tony. And thank you for organizing this. And thank you to all the amazing people for being here for this long time. Thank you. God bless. Yeah.
From me, I want to end by saying thank you so much to the panelists for being part of this conversation. Thank you so much to amazing people who have been able to participate in this conversation and for being patient and listening to us for more than, I think it's 2 hours now. And it shows how interesting the conversation has been. I believe we have been able to learn 1 or 2 things, and let's continue the conversation. You can find us on social media at menandfgm, #menandfgm on all platforms. Let's continue the conversation and feel free to reach out to us. And we hope to organize more of these conversations going forward. For now, bye.
Bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.